if you truly have a good base grasp of history, and you understand the cycles of events that happen, the cycles of people that happen, the more you kind of understand how humans across the globe have always operated and what their motives have been and what the systems of power have been, the less scared you are to live in your current time.
Right.
Everybody, I'm on X first thing in the morning, which is horrible for your mental health. But like, I see everyone in this state of doom, right? Like, everything that's going on right now, they think that this is gonna end something good that's been happening. The sooner you understand that, like, we're not special right now, we just have different players and different technology, the sooner you're just going to be content living in the world and happier as a person.
Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. My name is Jack Wait, that's your name.
Hi, Dan. Or Jack, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, we were going to do some role reversals, but
that would be a fun episode if we just played each other for an entire episode.
I mean, playing me is not very difficult. You just don't.
Tone-wise, yeah. But I don't have the kind of information on culture and politics, modern culture and politics like you do.
Well, what's your middle name?
Manford.
Jack Manford Mandaville.
I know, it sounds like a serial killer.
I was just looking you up, and there's a .gov collection of veteran history projects.
I saw that when I got back from my first deployment, the invasion of Iraq, so this is over 20 fucking years old. A buddy of mine I went to high school with was doing a college project where he had to talk to a veteran, and instead of like going to talk like there were still plenty of World War II veterans alive back then, he just was like, well, my buddy's home on deployment, I'll talk to him. So he asked me about the invasion of Iraq for about a half hour, and now I'm in the Library of Congress.
Well, good for you, I guess. Lance Corporal Jack Mandaville. So for those who don't know or remember, I guess, tell me about the military. What made you decide to join?
You're the first person that's ever asked me that with a microphone. Everybody has a lot of people have romantic stories about why they joined. I joined about a month before 9/11. So at that time I was like, oh, I'll go on a MEU. I'll go to Thailand and train with some other militaries in the world. It'll be fun. Like, I straight up, basically what happened was all my friends were getting their college of acceptance letters at that point. And I was like, damn it, I knew I forgot to do something. So I was like, oh shit, I got to buy 4 years because I don't want to go to community college. So I literally went into the Marine recruiting office and I was like, I want to join the Marine Corps. And he's like, all right, well, we have a variety of jobs to offer. And I'm like, who are the guys that, the Storming the Beach guys? You mean the infantry? Yeah, I'll do that. And it was pretty much that simple. And I was a kid from the suburbs who just basically wanted to have his Hemingway moment and do 4 years. And I'm sure there was a certain level of patriotism there. And, I chose the Marine Corps for a reason. But I really just wanted to go shoot some guns for a few years and buy some time.
Yeah. That's kind of similar to Marty Scoblin's story. But it's not surprising that people who are writers would have the same story, right?
You want to get a little, especially like he's from a small town. I'm from the suburbs. We didn't grow up in crazy childhoods. You want to just test yourself a little bit that you haven't been tested in your upbringing. We had very loving, good families, and he didn't just join the Army. He joined the Rangers.
Yeah.
And that's extra level steps you have to take.
Triple volunteers, they say.
Yes.
Army, Airborne, and then Ranger.
Do you know what Marty and I both have in common?
AIDS.
More possibly for me than him.
Yeah, that's true.
He's
quite a bit more responsible.
Yeah, he's been married since he was like 20. We both of us did multiple tours overseas, and we've both been shot, but in training accidents.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
No Purple Heart for that.
No Purple Heart for that. No Purple Heart in Camp Pendleton armory accidents.
What happened with yours?
I got shot in the armory when we were cleaning weapons in my infantry school after boot camp.
At SOY?
Yeah. Yeah.
And what was the result of that? Because usually That's the kind of thing that can get you booted from the military, right? Not you, but the fucking negligent discharger, as it were.
Yeah, I don't. Essentially, at that time, you had like 5 E4, E5s babysitting 500 privates who just got out of boot camp, and they're learning the saw for the first time. And
Let the bolt slam forward.
Yeah. We were in the armory. It was a Friday. It was going to be our first weekend. They let us out in town. The instructors didn't do their due diligence clearing the weapons as we came off this live fire range. And he took the buttstock off. He kind of just let the weapon drop on the table, and the bolt slammed forward. There was a round lodged up in there, and I was scrubbing the barrel, and it just, boom, went through.
You were scrubbing the barrel with it in the weapon.
Yeah.
Cool.
I was standing right in front
So
of
everybody was wrong in that situation, I guess. Yeah.
E2, I think I was still an E1. E1 me was like, I'm just happy to be here. Like E4 me would have definitely made sure people were held responsible for that negligence. But yeah.
Well, look, Lance Corporal Jack Mandaville, quite a bit more. There's the photos of you in war.
There's photos of me in war on the internet?
Well, I don't know if they're combat photos or not, but in uniform when you were serving are interesting.
What photos are there?
Well, let me see if I can. You know how wait, this thing is fucking going crazy again. Do you see that? I just saw a flicker out of the corner of my eye. I think our technology is failing us. Yeah, if you just search your name in Google and then click images, you can see all kinds of weird shit. There's
photos of me in the military.
There's some tasteful nudes here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like I think it's the one that I'm looking at now is from one of your task and purpose articles. It looks like. So speaking of that, what did you do when you got out of the Marine Corps?
I went back up to Minnesota where I grew up for about a year. Realized I had moved on, and a buddy of mine who's currently a officer in 10th Group.
Wait, you said you realized you moved on. What do you mean?
I outgrew Minnesota. Those 4 years that I kind of I didn't just do war. I got to go to other parts of the world. I love the Marine Corps because I guess the only romantic part of the Marine Corps I feel about to this day was I got to serve with dudes from every conceivable geographic part of the country, from mostly every religion, from every ethnicity, from every viewpoint. So that was my first taste of getting like all of America in a concentrated area, and I think that opened that I didn't want to go back to Minnesota and just get a job at a mill and shit out babies when I was 25. Mm-hmm. So I went down to Austin, Texas, had a buddy that was going to school at UT and that I served with, and just kind of ended up making Texas a thing, and I was a bum for quite a while. I went to school and I didn't really know what I wanted to do until like 2009-ish. So like 2 or 3 years after I got out of the military.
Yeah. And what did you do then?
I was going to school, and that's when it had been building, but when I started pulling the trigger, we're like, I want to be a writer. I want to be in creative work. And I started writing. I started, you write about what you know. So I hope They Serve Beer in Hell was huge at the time. Mm-hmm. All the stuff that Tucker Max was putting out. And what I did is I started writing short stories about my time in the Marine Corps, where it wasn't like moto, combat, oorah, deep shit. It was like crazy shit I witnessed at the barracks and even on deployment, and just the kind of crazy characters I met while I was in the military. And because I probably didn't even realize at the time, they really kind of shaped. They outside of my childhood, they were in the second phase of my life, shaping who I was, just being around them. And I started writing just, crazy stories. And
what was what was it doing for you? Right? Because this is just for the reason I'm asking for context. I used to, when I wrote about certain things, this is nuts. Probably shouldn't have done this, but I would take MDMA for like 3-4 days in a row.
You can operate on that stuff.
Yeah, but I would take it for 3 or 4 days in a row and put myself into a depressive spiral so that I could feel, because for me, feeling isn't the easiest thing to do.
Right.
So I would put myself in that situation, spike my serotonin for a couple of days, and then just completely deplete it, and then write from that perspective a lot. And it did help me bridge the gap between, like, I'm not a fucking sociopath, right? I'm just a little of the tism, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it helped me kind of develop a connection between my logical brain and my emotional
Your
brain
feelings
to some degree, right? It was very effective for me. So for you, what was it? Was it therapeutic, or was it just entertainment? What was it for you?
So in hindsight, and I didn't realize that's what I was getting from it at the time, or maybe even seeking it subconsciously. But in hindsight, there was quite a bit of catharsis there. I had all these, and again, I wasn't telling like sad stories or the first time I saw a dead guy or any of that stuff. It was just fun stories, because I think I missed my buddies, and so there was a bit of catharsis there, and I was getting to. It's crazy, and I learned that was the first time I ever learned that if you put that stuff on paper and you put it out there, you can actually let go of it, which is I think the reason why a lot of guys like to go to the VFW and tell war stories is they have a lot they want to say, but it's hard for them to get it out. And so for me, that was my way of just like releasing it for myself. I wasn't pent up with kind of all this stuff I had inside me anymore. So, and then I would imagine the other part was I wanted to dip my toe in the water and see if I can entertain people and make people laugh and make a living off of it, which took a few years before I was able to get a livable paycheck off of it.
I mean, I don't know about people who write action and drama and shit like that, but people who write comedy are almost always working something out. Especially people who do comedy, like stand-up and shit like that.
Yeah, we've both hung out with stand-ups. They even for me, I have a hard time being. I look at stand-ups. I have a 2 lesbian policy, where I won't hang out with more than 2 lesbians at once. 1 lesbian's fine. 2 lesbians are fine. You throw a 3 or more lesbians in the mix, it's uncomfortable and it's chaos. And as a straight guy, I don't want to be there. I feel the same way about stand-ups. I love hanging out with stand-ups 1, 2 at a time. When you're in a room full of stand-ups, you're like, oh God, this is exhausting. But golly, what was I saying? What was the question that led into that?
People that are doing comedy are often working things out to some degree.
Yeah, I had amazing parents and everything growing up, but I had problems as a child that I never really was able to kind of handle until I was in my 20s. I got diagnosed with Tourette's when I was 8, and I did all the tics, and they heavily medicated me, and and the medication blew me up. I became a fat kid, and at an early age I learned that self-deprecating humor was a way to like protect myself, because if I can control the narrative by making fun of myself, the other kids can't make fun of me. And that carried on into when I started working and when I started writing and working in the arts. Now it's like I'm not that little insecure boy anymore, but that's the only way, not the only way, but that's the core way I know how to do comedy. So now I can do it and then, say cut, and I'm secure with myself as a man and I know who I am. But that developed from me being a child who was a very insecure, scared child. Because if you read even those early stories, the way I view myself in the Marine Corps is I never painted myself out to be some cool, awesome Marine. I was like, I always felt like the outsider, even in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, it's interesting to see, I guess, people discover themselves in very chaotic situations. I think it's, it's almost like, this is kind of a silly comparison maybe, but mutations genetically happen under great duress, right?
I'm not educated on that, but I've heard quite a few people touch on that.
Yeah. It's like some sudden like I guess you could let's call it a black swan environmental event, right? Like about 12,000 years ago, everything was frozen and it melted very rapidly, right? So two things happen. One, things that are already trending in that direction evolutionarily will succeed better because they're adaptable to that, obviously. But also, like the extreme conditions inspire mutation as well, right? Like think about your body. It is designed to regulate, to reach homeostasis, right? And that's the case for most biological material, to reach homeostasis. So, and there's a finite amount of energy. So think about growing later in life. Your body starts to prioritize certain things. Eyesight's not one of them, right?
Right.
Eyesight starts to deteriorate, and your body's prioritizing other stuff.
Teeth start falling out.
Yes, right. So both of those things happen, and it prioritizes stuff. So yeah, that happens, and it's always been interesting to me that when you put a large amount of stress on something, I don't think it necessarily, like when it's a human being, I don't think it changes your character, but it does reveal your character, right? So it's like chiseling something out of marble, right? And watching that happen to people has always been really interesting to me, because I'm sure you've seen this too. Some dipshit private like yourself from the suburbs shows up with no concept of what it's like to have your dick in the dirt all the time.
First time firing a weapon, right? All that.
And then like 18 months later and a deployment later, you're a fucking chiseled asshole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you're not a completely different person. The values that you had before are now just wrapped in this armor of a dude that's actually seen some shit now. And that process,
you're not as easily startled.
Yeah. That process has always been really interesting to me.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it so many times. And then you see a second version, or sometimes even a third version, after somebody gets out of the military, because there's that period of anxiety and confusion and uncertainty, and then there's some certainty, and then there's another evolution typically that happens after that.
When you discover your post-military self, which is the most important thing you can do, especially if you're only like a 4 to 8 year person, like you're still young. Finding out you're the citizen soldier who goes in and does what they need to do for a certain period, but you were meant to do something more than the military, and some are lucky and they know what they want to do after the military. Others have to spend a period discovering it on their own.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff is pretty fascinating to me.
I've heard things about and I don't know if this is similar to what you were talking about, but I've heard things that like the children of Holocaust survivors are like super fucked up. Not a lot of them, or quite a few of them are like fucked up, and it's not even necessarily any trauma their parents brought to them in the household because of their trauma, but it's like their parents' DNA was warped before they were born because of just the insane kind of things their parents went through.
Well, yeah, certainly, right? I mean, we have genetic memory. I don't think there's any question about that. No matter what. So here's a good example. You'll see animals like a kitten that's surrounded by dogs, or a dog that's only around cats. They might take on some of the characteristics over time.
We've seen it in humans.
Yeah, that's the nurturing part. But the nature part, a little kitten comes out ready to fuck shit up. Their eyes are closed for the first couple weeks, but they're still like claws are out, right? They're ready to fight. Whereas a puppy is like a human being. It's just fucking useless.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And what they're going to be is determined on their environment.
Right. So then why? Why is that the case? Certainly we've discovered a litany of genetic markers for certain types of characteristics and shit like that. So yeah, genetic memory is a thing. And I think that's what a lot of religions and philosophies over the years have referred to this, right? Like the Bible describes it as what they refer to as the sins of the father, right, will permeate through 7 generations if the cycle isn't broken. That's the way the Bible mentions it. And I don't know if that specifically has truth to it, but certainly there's something to it, right? Like when I say, I don't know if those particulars are accurate, but the process very clearly is. There's something going on there, right? And I don't know, I've never seen any real, like an actually good study for it. right?
Yeah.
Because I've anecdotally I've seen it a bunch, right?
Right, and the only people I know that have touched on that are people that like do a lot of hallucinogens and stuff. So
Yeah.
I don't know what their knowledge of science is compared to like their gut feeling about things.
Well, they're also super annoying.
Some can be, yeah.
Anyways, so yeah, it's like, what is that? And when I think of something like that, that's a natural process, my brain immediately goes to, okay, how do we take advantage of this, right? Like whatever circumstantial or thing, whatever thing is going on in the world, how do I use that to my advantage somehow, or shield myself against it if it's just pure evil or something? But usually things aren't so black and white, right?
No.
Like we think of things like sadness and pain, like physical pain and fear, as negative, but those are indicators, right? Like sadness means that there's something either chemically wrong with you or it's something that you need to resolve. And we tend as human beings to just compress that shit. Mm-hmm. Like, it's uncomfortable to talk about it, so I'm not going to do that, right?
Especially based on what culture you're in, too.
Yeah, well, yours, Norwegian people, German people. That whole area, Minnesota in general, is a fucking breeding ground for passive aggressiveness.
Yeah, God, if you want, and I could bring Marty into that discussion as well. Yeah,
you can add the Dakotas into that, too.
Oh, yeah, they're just as Lutheran and Scandinavian. Mm-hmm. It's a system that works if you live in it. Marty and I have talked about this before, when you leave that world, that the upper Midwest, when you leave that world and you try to exist in it, you're not prepared. Like it's such that Scandinavian kind of upbringing is so, there's a lot of repression that goes on that, you don't know, like to this day, I don't know how to work politic. I don't know how to advocate for myself well, because when you're up there, it's like you don't, everything is looked at as bragging. If you take any level of ownership of your work, like don't brag.
Yeah.
I'm not bragging. I'm letting people know I accomplished this.
Right. Yeah.
I'm saying thank you when someone says good job.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard for me to deal with that too, honestly. And then, the other part is, let's say fear is a good way, like, who Gavin DeBecker is?
Oh, I'm not familiar.
So he wrote this book called The Gift of Fear back in the day. He's the foremost expert on close personal protection. He runs the largest EP organization on earth. So
really?
Yeah. He's never military, nothing like that. He's understood it for some reason, right? And he's developed the best programs for it over the years. For 40 years now, he's the best. Wrote this book called The Gift of Fear. We see, like most people, I think, see something like fear as intrinsically negative. Right. Yeah. And you see that a lot in this human.
They equate fear with cowardice.
Yeah. You see this, and then there's a lot of platitudes surrounding that too. But you see this in the psychedelic is what it is now, but it used to be the human potential movement. Like, remember Donnie Darko when Homeboy's character was like, it's either fear or love, man. That's it. It's like, no, that's fucking stupid, right? And Jake Gyllenhaal was correct to call him out for that. It's fucking dumb. Fear is a tool, right? It's a tool in your tool belt. Snakes with certain patterns on them will fuck you up. So understanding that is a good idea. Looking like a fear of heights is a smart thing.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
Don't walk too close to the edge.
It's like we see like a lot of people contextualize these things as being intrinsically negative, and they're not, right? Yeah. So when I see stuff happening like that, to put a bow on that, I try to, and this isn't about being positive, it's about being fucking logical. You know what I mean? How can I weaponize that? How can I use that to my advantage? You know what I mean? Like my fear makes me more aware of what's going on around me, so I can pull in more data and process it more quickly. There's nothing bad about that. That's, if you can turn that stuff into a positive for you, then you've developed a power now, superpower in some cases, right? So that's, again, to put a bow on it, that's one of the things I like most about these transition, like from civilian to military and then military back to civilian, and that little confused and irritable period that most of us go through, and then the discovery of purpose again, right, is super it's very important for us to go through, but for me, it's been very interesting as well to see it in myself and a bunch of other people. You know what I mean? So that's why I like to ask people about the specific process that they went through to get to where they are today. Because you're, a relatively well-functioning human being now. And at 24, 25...
I don't look the part, but yeah.
At 24, 25, you weren't.
No.
To be honest, I was a fucking idiot until probably 33, 34, something like that.
That's funny you mention that. I never felt like I got my footing, not just professionally, but understanding myself till about the same age that you said.
Yeah. So, it is what it is. So you're doing, you were exploring that a little bit, and you start working with Nick.
Yeah,
right?
So I would say the last big boy job, I bounced around a bit for just crashing on couches. I had some couple Marine buddies that were living in Midland, Texas, and I ended up out in the oil field out there and got really roped into a sweet job where...
I mean, that stuff is like contract. People that don't know about O&G, especially in West Texas and Oklahoma, don't understand how addictive it is. Because you're in your mid-20s, it's wild as hell. You make a fuck ton of money, and then you get a couple of weeks off. Then you make a fuck ton of money, and you get a couple of weeks off.
Oh, definitely for drillers.
That's worse than fucking heroin, dude.
Yeah.
For a dipshit 25-year-old, that's not great.
I tell people all the time, like, if you're trying to figure yourself out and you just want to make some dough until you figure yourself out, go to the freaking oil field. Like, you'll have money in the bank when you finally figure out what the hell you want to do. But I did flowback, so I basically would sit on an oil lease after they were done fracking for like 20 to 30 days at a time, all by myself. I'd have to check like a freaking gauge every few hours, and then I basically sat in there and did my best. I was completely solitary for weeks at a time, and I had internet, and I would just write, and eventually Nick saw some of my work out there. I flew out to North Carolina, and that was my first full-time creative job I ever had. Was 2013. I'd done stuff for like the Duffel blog in its infancy and all that, but I wasn't getting paid.
So how long did you do fracking?
A little over a year. It wasn't that long. It was enough of a period to make money and man, I was doing 12 hours a day at work, and then I'd come home and write for 4 or 5 hours every night. And I did that for about a year. And that's when I finally got in my groove, and someone felt I was worthy of being paid for it.
And then who was that person?
Nick Palmisciano, yeah. Nick, I went out to North Carolina. He, Ranger Up, it was a big T-shirt brand at that time.
And he's always wanted to do a media company. Which now it's Diesel Jack, but he's always wanted to do content creation.
The T-shirts funded the content. Yeah. The T-shirts were there so he could make silly videos and blog and do all the stuff that's very common in our atmosphere now. And Nick was one of the early people that was doing it. And I wrote YouTube videos. I was in YouTube videos. I wrote blogs. I wrote product copy. And when we would sell a shirt, it wasn't like a paragraph about what kind of freaking material it's made of, and we would write like 1,000. We would tell a story to sell a T-shirt. We would get like people like emotional wanting to buy a shirt. So we were pumping out 2 shirts a week and writing all this flowery stuff about America or this unit or whatever the topic of the shirt was. And then that's soon after we got linked up with Matt, Jared, and Rocco, and eventually Evan, and we made a movie. Yeah,
the highest grossing independent film of 2016. Which is retarded.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about.
Yeah, it's unfortunately I could not. I was working for the federal government at the time, so I couldn't. It wasn't that I cared about that. I just couldn't make the schedule work to get out there. But luckily,
your namesake.
Yeah, but luckily,
you made the character.
Luckily, one of my favorite actors ever played me.
Yeah, he was so good.
Yeah, he's the best. I mean, I've been watching that dude since. Remember Men at Work?
Yes,
with Charlie Sheen and Emilio. He
was in Platoon with Charlie Sheen.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, but Platoon. I mean, I watched it as a kid because my dad liked war movies and shit, but it didn't really register with me that much. But Men at Work, I watched when I was like, I don't remember, 12 or 13 maybe.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Would it come out in like 90 or 91 or some shit like that?
Men at Work? I thought it was like the late 80s. It could have been.
It was 90.
90, okay.
So, oh my God. Ridiculous. When he cuffed those two cops onto the fucking merry-go-round or whatever, I was like, man, this is definitely somebody that I would like to meet, and I still have never met him. It's Keith David, but I've never met him, but he did play me in a movie, which is nice. Which is like, you could say, oh, I played him in a movie, but no, he played me in a movie.
No, that was supposed to be you. Yeah,
that was way better. And, to be honest, deep down, I am a black man. And I think everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So it was an appropriate casting choice.
Just like Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
Our nation's true first black president.
Yeah. Well, he did play jazz sax.
Yeah.
And
especially in the 90s, like that's a good indicator. Like there's a black guy in that white guy's body.
Yeah. So you're working at with Nick doing stuff, and what was that like for you? I guess because you've always been, and we'll get to this. You've always been a big fan of history, and I think people that have a better context for root first principles, right? I talk about this shit all the time. I think I talked about it on yesterday's or the last episode that we did of this show, but there's a lot of platitudes in philosophy, unfortunately, especially modern philosophy, which is to say it's 240 characters at a time.
Oh yeah.
Which is like, if you read Locke or Montesquieu, it's quite a bit more in depth, right? To understand why freedom of speech matters, you have to understand all the stuff that happened, like the fact that the average human being, you and I, would not have had any real rights. We would have had privileges in every society that's ever existed in the history of human beings, except for this like several years period in Athens back in the day when they had a direct democracy. It was the only time ever that ever happened. It still has like our democracy. They
value the arts. We could have maybe survived in that.
Yeah. But they realize like a direct democracy is like, these people are too fucking stupid to be doing this. But you and I as individuals would have had no rights. We would have had some measure of privileges, right?
We would have been lucky if we weren't slaves.
Right, yeah. And then the Magna Carta happens, and barons and governors have rights. And it's the first time that we ever limit a king's power. Right. And then a couple hundred years later, there's the serf rebellions that happened in England. 60 or so years after that, the levelers come around and they write for the first time. They wrote our Constitution, basically. It's called an Agreement of the People.
Can I just, and I don't mean to interrupt.
No, go ahead.
We as Americans need to give a lot more credit to Britain. We act like we invented freedom.
Yeah, it took them like 1,000 years.
Yes, they set in stone what we eventually took and made our own.
You know what it's like? It's like fucking going to the bakery and buying a cake and then like taking it out of the package and putting it on a plate and be like, hey, I made you guys this cake.
Right,
like, all right, cool.
It's Thanksgiving. Like I made this turkey for you. Like you got that from Boston Market.
Yeah. No, we got it from England and France.
Yeah.
We don't give France any credit. Right, the
not just for their military help, but there's culturally
the Renaissance and the French Revolution set the stage for what we did.
Yeah, we helped out with their revolution, though. We gave them a little inspiration.
Sure, yeah, we did.
They got real violent with it.
Yeah, it was a little, but they were not. They had been fucked around so much by the brass, by the bourgeoisie, so as
by
it
those
were,
bourbons.
Yeah, that they were just like, you know what? It was the same in Russia in the early 20th century.
When the Romanovs fell?
Yeah, they're like, fuck these people. We're going to line them up in a basement and pow, pow, pow.
But that's the thing is, Nikolai II was one of the only monarchs left that had pure authoritarian power.
Yeah.
Everybody else was like, hey, if we want to stay in power, we
need
got
a parliamentary system. Yeah.
Yeah.
But back to the point. The levelers later on, I think in the late part of the 16th century, 16th century, they write this document called an Agreement of the People. And it was the first time ever that somebody wrote a constitution where everybody is on an equal playing field, right? It wasn't ratified by a government or anything. But then you get Locke, and he talks about two specific things. One is property rights, and the other one is limited government. Those are the two most important things, in my opinion, when it comes to government.
And he was English.
Yes. And then Montesquieu writes about separation of powers. that the judicial and the legislative and the executive cannot be the same, right? It's just too much of a concentration of power. We owe everything to these things. And so to understand why speech is important and cannot be fucked with, you have to understand that the most important right is property rights, and the most important property you have is yourself. And the most important expression of that is your ability to think whatever the fuck you want. And speaking is thinking. And that's why censorship is evil. It's not just bad or wrong or we don't like it. It's evil, right? You're controlling someone's mind. And that's why it matters, right? So if this is why I think that people who are fans of history just happen to have a deeper understanding of this stuff. And it's a detriment to our society that people who don't understand our history are in charge of our fucking future. You know what I mean?
I've always said that if you truly if you truly have a good base grasp of history, and you understand the cycles of events that happen, the cycles of people that happen, you understand how there were certain things in the past that were like truly revolutionary, but for the most part, we are in a constant. The more you kind of understand how humans across the globe have always operated and what their motives have been and what the systems of power have been, the less scared you are to live in your current time.
Right.
Everybody, I'm on X first thing in the morning, which is horrible for your mental health.
Yeah.
But like I see everyone in this state of doom, right? Like everything that's going on right now, they think that this is gonna end something good that's been happening. We've constantly been in that state, and the sooner you understand that like we're not special right now, we just have different players and different technology, the sooner you're just going to be content living in the world and happier as a person, not being scared of something you can't control,
some ephemeral nonsense. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. It's the same with the Stoics. Like we forget it every 200 years or so, and then somebody rediscovers it. Like, why are we unsolving problems? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I understand that when people get bored, they will create problems for themselves.
Yeah, we got a good thing going in the West with that.
Yeah, nobody does it better than us.
Yeah.
America's probably the best because we've got problems that other countries are like, what the fuck? Even other Western countries are like, I don't think that's a thing, dude.
I would imagine that's mostly post-World War II is when that ball was set in stone.
Yeah, I mean, but I feel like I don't understand why we keep forgetting it. I mean, I get it to some degree, but it's never been something that's even occurred to me. And I feel like we can live better and more comfortable lives without forgetting first principles, right? Like the comfort that we derive from the greatness of our culture should be fertilizer for the next stage of human evolution and philosophical revolution, not, well, we won. Like, you don't win at life.
No.
That's not,
it's not permanent.
No, it's not. It's like, how can you win at life if it's finite?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just, that's not how it works.
You have to be in some level of struggle.
Yeah. You always need some level of struggle. And the way that we used to contextualize that back in the day, which was very effective for, regardless of what was going on politically, it was very effective for the entirety of human history. I understood that my life was going to end and my legacy mattered to me. I borrowed honor from my past, from my ancestors, and I used it during my life, and then I gave it to my children to take into the future, right?
Right.
That was the equation. And it's like, what did it mean to live a good life in 1850? It was to find a wife, have some kids, make their life better than yours. And that was it.
Yeah.
Right?
It's the basic notion of leave the world better than when you inherited it.
Yeah, and then, now it's just like, I need a fucking mental health day.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, man. You think that like shirking away from your problems is going to help you, and it won't. The weight doesn't get lighter, you get stronger. That's how it works.
Yeah. It's Ryan Howard, the obstacle is the way.
Yeah, yeah. Ryan Holiday, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure he's quoting somebody, right?
Yeah.
It's probably Seneca that said that, if I had to guess. I won't look it up now, but you guys can fact check me on that. And to your other point about this general malaise in society, I think a big part of it is Well, for me, it's a chicken and egg conversation. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it. But most of the so-called influencers on either side of the aisle, but particularly on the conservative side, have made their careers and money by selling catastrophe, right?
Yeah.
That like
everything's going to fall apart.
Yeah, you have to keep somebody on the edge of their seat. It's like, dude, this isn't a fucking thriller novel. It's life.
And
like it's meant to be enjoyed.
Yeah.
Right? And lived well. It's not meant to like white knuckling the steering wheel throughout your whole life.
Yeah.
And you wonder why there's so much anxiety, such a huge rise in suicide, especially in groups that have historically been resilient against it, like teenage girls, for example, used to be that wasn't a thing. Suicide for them, right? For the most part in the Western culture. And now they're the fastest growing demographic.
I would imagine social media has a play in that.
Yeah. But I mean, what is it about the social media? So is it that we crave this? Because look, somebody made reality TV in the 80s, and we were just like, fuck yeah, dude. I know, like my brain knows. It's like eating fucking junk food. My brain knows this isn't good, but I can't stop. It's MSG for the brain. You know what I mean? And it's just gone further and further and further and further until we don't know what fucking reality is anymore. It is.
Which anyone that's ever worked on reality TV will tell you.
None of it's real.
It's all orchestrated.
Yeah, none of it's real. Patton Oswalt used to do a really good bit about this. He goes, we're making so much reality TV that we're not going to, like, the reality in our own lives will become unsatisfying at some point. You know what I mean? Like,
that's where the mental health problems come in.
Yeah, it's like and there's so many different touch points here, but from the perspective of the teenage girl, for example, the body issues and all that bullshit, and they've been blaming.
Which teenage girls have always been insecure. That's not anything new.
No, but like, doubling down on that over and over again, because the magazines
selling the solution to their anxieties.
Yeah, the magazines used to get all the heat for this, but social media clearly made it way worse. And that isn't to say like social media should be it's not intrinsically evil. We shouldn't be Luddites and throw all this stuff in the
we
ocean.
all get to communicate with each other now. Yeah. I can communicate with some dude in frickin' Saudi Arabia right now if I want to.
Yeah, so there was in the latter part of the 19th century, Rutherford B. Hayes basically stole an election because the Repubes his party didn't want Reconstruction to continue, right? And nobody else did either. They wanted to shut that shit down.
That started with Johnson.
Yeah, Western Union and the Associated Press helped him steal the election. They put out a bunch of fake information, right, to change the events that were happening at the time because they wanted to stop that. In 2024, that would be very difficult to do.
Yeah.
Right? Because of Twitter.
Because everyone can talk.
Yeah. I mean, sunlight's the best disinfectant, right? So and then, I don't know if you saw this, but Zuck put out a fucking statement. This morning, I saw that. Yeah, he's getting rid of fact checking. Yeah, you know what? So he's getting rid of all the independent fact checkers. Yeah. He's going to community notes instead of direct moderation.
I'm not educated. What's the difference between community
So a direct moderation would downvote in the algorithm. Or delete the content entirely. Community notes will explain why, with verifiable sources, it's incorrect.
That's a much better model.
Of course,
that's what X does.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And he said that he said just like X does because it's better, right?
Yeah.
It's
more democratic.
What happened was, and I think this is another study I would love to see, the width of his shoulders. As it's gotten bigger, dude. Like I'm not even kidding. I bet you could see him move from either apolitical or leftist. I don't really know what he was. I think it was just an opportunist. I don't think
he was just a kid that wanted to make money.
Yeah,
get laid.
Probably more opportunist. But you could see him move from whatever he was into libertarian by how broad his shoulders were. There's a direct correlation. I am convinced there's a direct correlation.
Do you think that has to do with years of internet bullying about his demeanor and the way he looked? Because that's
I think it's Rogan. I think Rogan popularized the UFC. Remember, he's been part of it the whole time.
Oh yeah.
He and a couple of other guys were instrumental in that. Chuck and oh my God, he was in the movie. Randy.
Tour. Yeah.
They really
were the first big names.
They really popularized it late 90s, early 2000s. But that stuff, and then giving men a community square to discuss dude stuff again, hunting and fucking just doing dumb dark humor and whatever the fuck else, right? I think that it became popular, it became faddish to do it, and then that's how it works. And then he starts taking testosterone. You can tell. You can look at him and tell.
Yeah, and he's like mid-50s.
You can look at him and tell. No, he's in his. You're talking about Rogan. No, I'm talking about Zuck.
Okay, yeah.
Like you could see him start to fill out as a man.
Yeah,
he became a man, right? And I think that's what it is. Men are supposed to be strong and logical and protect people and put. Like leaders eat last, put rights of others before even your own rights. You know what I mean? Like take care of people. And women are supposed to be empathetic and our portals to the spiritual world and all that stuff. You can't have two of those in one relationship. It doesn't work, right? Like you said, two lesbian maximum or whatever the fuck you said.
Oh yeah, it's too much. It's too much estrogen. Yeah. Plus,
we are designed to complement each other by nature, right? Yeah. It's just how it is, man. It's not a judgment on anything. If you want to go fuck dudes, and God bless.
Did you see that statistic though? And I don't know how accurate it is. It could just be something that blew up, but the divorce rates between lesbian couples is like 75%. The divorce rates with straight couples is somewhere near 50%, and the divorce rates with gay couples, two men who operate more logically, is 25%.
Yeah. Do you want to? Do you know this? You should ask Gary about this because he's done bits on it before. But the highest when it
domestic violence,
it's way
ask
worse.
Any cop. Yeah,
it's way worse.
Oh my God. Well, I would imagine, I deduce a lot of it has to do. This is a stereotype of lesbians, but it's a stereotype for a reason. They move fast.
Yeah,
they don't vet lesbians. Each other.
Yeah, that's the date. Or I'm sorry, that's the joke. Actually, I was talking to Candace about this the other day. The joke is, what does a lesbian bring to the second date? And it's a U-Haul.
Right.
And what does a man bring to the second date? What second date?
Yeah.
Right. But you can see right there that we're designed to complement each other. We are wild assholes. And our wild assholishness lets us conquer things, discover things, build shit, and create civilization and tech and all this stuff. But just like you have to master yourself to some degree, that other side, the female, feminine side, is there to temper us, right? To make sure that the civilization we build isn't just Vikings, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise we just rape and pillage for the rest of eternity, and we can't do that. You know what I mean? Because we'll eventually run out of fucking shit to rape and pillage. We have to build something for ourselves and not just take it, right? That's what women do
and
for
reproduce.
Us. And reproduce. And it's super important that those two things coexist together. And I was having a conversation about this morning. It's like, you're a woman, you're going to get emotional. And sometimes we're going to fight because of it, right? That's just how it is. And
I mean, one of the most famous stories of all time was a woman started the biggest, the Trojan War. It all centered around pussy.
Yeah. It's happened before William Wallace to some degree.
Yeah.
Although that prima nocta shit isn't real, but the wars have begun over women for sure. But yeah, you're going to get a little wild sometimes, but we both can't be emotional, right? And I'm going to be aloof and stupid and socially inept, and you're going to have to deal with that, right? Like, if you operate from that understanding, from that general base, you can fucking build a good relationship with someone.
You can empathize with your partner and not hold it against them that they're not where you think they should be.
Yeah, it's like, hey, you were really crazy this morning. Just saying. It's like, I still love you, but fuck, man.
Yeah. Well,
she's like, yeah, but you forgot fucking this. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I mean, if you're going to dish it, you got to fucking take it. That's just the way it is.
Sean Connery had his way of dealing with it.
Oh, yeah, just a little rap on the beak.
Just to smack him around a little bit.
So you have a new, we mentioned history a bunch. You have a new history show.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
I started my own YouTube. Man, I've been on YouTube for years, writing for other people, producing for other people, acting for other people, but I've never done my own thing and centered a show around, content I purely want to make and get to control. And I just released and this has been about 9 months in the making. It first came up on the Unsub podcast where they're like, you should do a history show, and that audience of theirs bullied me enough to where I finally pulled the trigger, and now I have a history podcast show. Or no, I'm sorry, a history YouTube show. And my whole goal with that is, and I make it clear when I open every episode, is I'm not trying to change the world. I want to give you some fun information that you can tell your buddies at the bar. Maybe at best get you to think on things a little bit. But I'm not. I'm referring to it as pop history. So I have to make people laugh. That's the number one thing. This is supposed to be entertainment. I need to make people laugh while educating them on certain topics. So, you know, there's only so much context I can give because it has to share with the humorous part. And again, I think for as long as I've been doing what I've been doing, I've finally learned. I know how to communicate those things. And the first episode we just released last Friday was on pretty much how
Queen Victoria is a piece of shit.
That royal inbreeding, and from Queen Victoria and Christian the Ninth of Denmark, their grandchildren, who are all related to each other.
The Tsar.
Nicholas was a grandson of both of them, I think.
And then the German Chancellor.
Wilhelm was a grandson of Victoria.
And then, of course, the King of England as well.
Grandson of Victoria. Yeah. They all looked alike.
Yeah.
Like, that bloodline was tight.
Yeah.
Basically, millions of people died over the biggest family feud in the history of the world.
I mean, like, fuck the War of the Roses. That's in comparison, because World War I, our tech outpaced our strategy.
100%.
So
Same thing with the Civil War.
Yeah,
People forget that.
Yeah, we had a Gatling gun back then.
Right.
And we were still fighting in
still
line
marching in
formation.
column,
It's like, fuck, dude. That's not good. It's man.
The War of the Roses, man, I want to do that. It was research intensive to even explain the royal bloodlines in World War I. The War of the Roses is like intimidating to try to explain that to people.
I don't know if you're going to be able to do that in 12 minutes.
No. The softcore guys, Rob and Dan, they did about an hour and a half on it. And
that's an hour and a half show for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, and then the next show we got coming out, I'm debating which one I want to release first, because we've got 5 in the can ready to post. But actually, you know what? I want your feedback on this. Do you think I should do a video about Robert Todd Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln's oldest son? Kind of the whole theme is he's probably one of the unluckiest Americans to ever exist. Or on how the Norse the Columbus Day is bullshit because he was second place to the Americas by 500 years.
Yeah. Well, yeah, about because it was 980, right?
980 is when the Norse showed up to Greenland. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know much about Bob Todd, actually. I know that his mom was crazy.
Yep.
I know that she was adamant about him not joining the military during the time of war, which was a deeply embarrassing thing for people. Right? I mean, like, you can just think, I mean, this is silly, but think of Captain America, the first Captain America movie. Is like, men are dying. I don't have the right to not go do my part for my country, right? That's how people felt back then. I think it was like 16% of the total population of America male population went to World War II, something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas in our generation, it was 0.45%, quite a bit less, right? Now,
which there's different factors on why.
Quite a bit, yeah. I mean, certainly we shouldn't have done any of that shit, but, well, you know, it is what it is.
It happened.
But yeah, it's like, I know that part. I know that he was a tortured man, because even when he was allowed to join, they just made him like a fucking pack clerk, basically.
He was a bitch
runner. He was a runner for Colonel,
Grant,
right?
basically.
Yeah. Oh, he was for Grant.
He was there at Appomattox.
But he didn't do anything.
No, he
wasn't allowed.
He was
right?
a clerk.
Yeah. So he was probably receiving all of his massive cigar shipments, right? I don't know if you've ever heard that story.
Yeah, Grant loved having a stogie.
But somebody did a portrait of him. I don't remember if it was after Appomattox or after the one that was farther west. But somebody did a portrait of him in the national news of him smoking a cigar, and every cigar company in America or in the North started shipping him fucking like 2,000 cigars, right? Wild.
Yeah.
He was smoking like 20 cigars a day.
Yep. Yeah.
Like he was smoking cigars, which is like,
which it killed him.
yeah, fuck yeah, it did. That and the stress, you would think, yeah, but it's like
his presidency is people forget he did 2 terms.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a pretty impressive dude, to be honest.
Yeah,
because didn't.
No one expected much of him.
He didn't seem like he would be. He was kind of a dipshit when he was at West Point.
Yeah,
I think he almost got booted from West Point, did he not?
Yes, and
for like, was it grades or something? Something.
He wasn't a spectacular student.
Yeah, he was like super weak too, like frail and shit.
Oh, I didn't know that
at the time. Yeah.
But
he was like 18. So.
He did the Mexican American War like most of those guys, and then he drifted back into civilian life, and he failed at every endeavor he had as a civilian.
Yeah.
His wife's father didn't think shit of him.
Yeah. So tell me about Bob Todd, Robert Todd Lincoln. I don't know much about him other than the fact his military service and that part I know about. What else happened?
The oldest of there were 3 or 4 Lincoln boys. He was the oldest. One of his younger brothers died before Lincoln took the presidency. The other one died while he was president.
Yeah, a lot of people think that's why Mary went crazy.
It absolutely contributed to it. And then him getting killed is pretty much where the bitch started snapping.
Yeah.
But he was there for that too. He was supposed to be in the booth with his father that night, but he was like fatigued from doing clerk work, I guess. So he didn't go.
He had carpal tunnel.
But he was there by his father's bedside as he died. Then his other brother died shortly after Lincoln died. That's when Mary Todd officially snapped. He had to commit his mother because she'd legitimately gone crazy. Well, she escapes the nut house and then is running editorials in all the newspapers that will let her, just talking shit about Robert Todd. Robert Todd he went to law school in Northwestern, started his own private practice, was doing very well. Then the National Republican politics started bringing him in. Obviously he was a legacy. He had a very successful career on his own. He was the Secretary of War, which is essentially the Secretary of Defense now. Yeah. So that's one of the highest cabinet positions you can have. He was the ambassador to the UK. And they would try to the Republican Party was always encouraging him to run
for president,
which he was like, fuck no.
Yeah.
Well, so I think he was there in the room when James Garfield was assassinated. And then he was there in the vicinity, if not very close, when William McKinley was assassinated. And obviously he was pretty much there when his dad was assassinated.
Yeah.
His oldest, right when he was ambassador to England in the 1890s, his oldest son, Jack Lincoln, died. There's a lot of other things, but even like when he died, his wish, his final will, he wanted to be buried in his family farm in Illinois, and his wife had him buried in Arlington there, which I've seen his grave at Arlington. It's a very impressive location.
Yeah, there's a full-on sarcophagus there.
For Robert Todd Lincoln. Oh yeah. He's got a good view of DC from where he's sitting right up. He's not, if I'm not mistaken, he's not far from like where the Kennedys are and all that. But do you want to hear a really cool story?
Yeah.
This is a true story. This isn't one of those urban legend things. This is well documented. In the winter of 1864. They don't know if it was like late 1864, early 1865. Things are looking pretty good for the Union at that point. Robert Todd, I think this is right before he took his commission in the Army. He was standing on a train platform in Paterson, New Jersey. As the train is approaching, a surge of people basically pushed him off the platform. He fell down right where the train was coming. He was like this close to being run over by this train. This arm came down and swooped him back up and frickin' put him back on the platform, saved his life. Robert, back then, people didn't know what the children of presidents look like.
Yeah.
But even back then, as of now, they knew who like celebrity actors were. Robert Todd looks up. The guy who had just saved his life was a guy named Edwin Booth, who was one of the most famous actors from one of the most famous acting families in America. And Robert Todd thanked him, and they went on their way.
Was it his cousin?
4 months, 3 or 4 or 5 months later, the man who killed his father, Abraham Lincoln, was Edwin's younger brother, John Wilkes.
Brother, yeah, I knew there was something there. That's fucking crazy.
And those two were estranged.
Sure, yeah. John Wilkes was a piece of shit.
He was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
So Edwin Booth,
he was like a grifter too, wasn't he? Didn't he get caught up in some weird shit with some of the plays that were going on?
Bro,
I don't remember all the stuff that was going on with him.
You know how you see people do like crazy terrorist militia shit?
Yeah.
And
then tried just like plant some flag of some cause that they have nothing to fucking do with.
That they never contributed to.
Like this asshole in New Orleans.
Yeah.
He's not like we
ISIS didn't probably know he existed.
No, we do think he had some contact with somebody at a super low level, but not like Nidal Hassan with Anwar al-Awlaki. Like the leader of fucking the Yemeni Al-Qaeda wasn't in contact with this dipshit.
Right.
He was just like, you know what? Fuck it, man. ISIS.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's kind of what, like...
Probably had some mental problems.
Yeah, that's what John Wilkes Booth was like. It's like, the South will rise again, motherfuckers. Like, shut up, dude.
Well, and that's the thing is every Confederate officer had accepted, okay, this is done.
Yeah.
We're moving on. Nobody, as far as we know, in any high-level position in the Confederacy
tried to foment
was
any kind of
sponsoring an assassination of a U.S. president.
Yeah. It would not have made political sense, especially when Lincoln granted a fucking pardon to everybody. It would have been suicide.
What I wanted to say earlier is the worst thing that happened to the South was the assassination of Lincoln. He was going to see Reconstruction through to its end.
Yeah.
He was going to have more empathy for everyone involved with it than any of the presidents that preceded or succeeded him.
Yeah.
But so the thing with Edwin Booth was he was not, he wasn't a hyper political guy. He was like a typical actor at the time. Like, the show must go on. I'm going to go up and do my freaking job. I don't care who watches me perform. His younger brother, John Wilkes, he basically was the equivalent of a guy that spent a little too much time on the internet and started living in his own world. And
he was an incel.
He was an incel. He was one of those guys that struggled with the fact that he never actually did anything for the Confederate cause. Yeah. He never served in the army. He never was at the Battle of Shiloh. He was never at the Battle of Gettysburg. Yeah. He was a guy who frickin' stayed out, and at the very end, he thought he was doing his job by assassinating political leaders. And I don't know if you saw have you seen the series Manhunt on Apple TV?
No.
It's about. Is it
good?
It's about the.
Oh yeah, I've seen it in there. I haven't watched it. Is it good?
Super good. It's about everything that happened after the Lincoln assassination. How they basically captured and how they captured where they killed John Wilkes Booth, and then they captured the other conspirators, and the last episode's about their trial. But it's a really good series. And I don't know if this happened in real life, but there's this scene where they're sneaking John Wilkes Booth into Maryland to hide him while he's being snuck on this boat with actual Confederate veterans who are just going home. They've been fighting for 4 years. They want to go the fuck home. And he's basically bragging about what he did for the cause. And these guys who were in the trenches for 4 years fighting for Lee are like, you're not one of us.
Yeah.
You're nothing like us.
You know what that reminds me of? I don't know if you've heard this story or not, but there was a concert, and at the concert was Toby Keith, a bunch of people, but Toby Keith was one of them, and Chris Christopherson was another. And Toby walks by and he goes, "Hey, Chris, I don't want to hear any of that liberal bullshit." And Christopherson, I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was something to the effect of, "You never served a day in your fucking life, dude. I'm a goddamn warrior.
I'm an Army
Fuck
Ranger.
you."
I flew fucking helicopters.
Yeah, I'm an Army Ranger, and you're nothing. So shut your fucking mouth.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Yeah, that's basically what it was.
And I'm sure that happened because I don't know what it is about, and you see it today as well. I think I call it like it's just FOMO, right? That's what it is. So, and it's what's causing a lot of the stupid shit that happens in the Pacific Northwest of this country. These people that have never, it's oppression FOMO, right? Like,
you're talking about like in Portland and Seattle?
Oppression is the new currency right now. Victimhood is the new currency, and they don't have any of it. and they got FOMO.
That's why you see so many white guys getting involved with it, right?
Like skinny
it's
white
dude, you grew
people,
up in the freaking suburbs,
seriously,
man.
Go join the fucking military.
Yeah.
And that's how you find, like, it's a good instinct to try to find some struggle. It's a good instinct to be interested in justice, as it were, right? But doing it as a facade makes you a piece of shit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're playing revolutionary.
Yeah, you're LARPing at life. Like, get the fuck out of here. There's actually a war going on if you want to go fight, bud. That's why I tell people that are always talking about Ukraine and Israel and shit. Like, pick up a rifle.
Plenty of Americans over there.
Yeah, there's a bunch. I've got friends over in Ukraine right now fighting for the Ukrainians. I mean, like, I wouldn't do it because I don't give a fuck about that, but they want to go fight. They believe in it. So that's what, when you actually believe in something, you go do it.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Otherwise, you're a bitch. So what's the next episode that's coming out? When?
This Friday. The goal
so it's every Friday?
Every Friday, 10 a.m. Central. And yeah, I'm deciding whether I want to do the Robert Lincoln one or the Columbus one. Also in the queue we have Baron von Steuben, kind of the father of the American military.
Yeah, the Blue Book.
The Blue Book.
Yeah, and every infantryman knows about that bullshit.
Yep. And I'm not going to get in a whole thing with that, but I'm sure you've heard about his personal life.
Little tumult.
Yeah.
In the personal life. I mean, look, he was a fucking soldier, man. There's going to be some tumult, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be a couple of divorces.
Well, and there's a reason why he always had very close male aides with him.
Oh, AIDS.
Yeah. I mean, pre-AIDS.
Yeah.
If he would have been around in the 80s, he might have been affected.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the guy who kind of saved the U.S. Army as we know it was a foreign mercenary, basically. He was also probably America's first case of stolen valor.
Who is that?
Baron von Steuben.
Oh, really? What did he do?
Washington brought him on under the assumption he was like a general in the Prussian army when he was just a captain.
Oh, shit.
So it worked out.
I mean, yeah, he did well for us. And so did, how old was he at the time? Because Lafayette was 24.
He would have been in his late 20s, early 30s. He was older than Lafayette.
Lafayette was 24.
Yeah, Lafayette was a youngster.
If you were making a top 10 generals from the Revolutionary War list, he would be in that top 10, 100%.
Dude, people forget with Lafayette, when he went back to France, his entire life, he was like involved in revolutionary shit. Yeah. It didn't just end in the United States.
No, he was that dude's one of the top. He's one of the top warrior commanders ever. Ever, like in any generation.
Even until his deathbed, the French were consulting with him on what to do.
Isn't that weird how we've got this modern concept of the French being surrender monkeys or whatever we call them? But even in World War II, there was a fucking French horseback unit that took on the 3rd Panzer Division. Yeah. And they were like riding horses up next to the tanks and sticking fucking bombs on the side of them and then riding away.
Yeah.
They took down a whole division or a whole company of 3rd Panzer Division.
We would have never landed on Normandy if it wasn't for all the brave French resistance that was happening.
Just, how did that trope ever develop? That France surrenders all the time. I don't remember where that came from. You should do a bit on that.
I don't know where that comes from either.
I don't know.
Because they weren't the only ones that were invaded by Nazi Germany and had to live under.
And then they fucking, right afterwards, and before we did, went to Vietnam and got their ass kicked too. You know what I mean?
Well, they were the ones that I think it started with Eisenhower. No, it was maybe with Eisenhower. They're like, don't.
Yeah.
Don't do it.
Yeah. Unless you're willing to go total war, right?
Yeah.
That's why we've never gone back to Korea, even though North Korea is always doing crazy shit. Because do you know, it would take, we would have to nuke them the same way we did Japan, right? That's the only reason Japan turned into a normal society after they were like, oh shit, this can all go away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And those people are unfortunately so caught up in that cult of personality that they're not going to know any better.
We would have to publicly cut his head off, like literally, and then nuke one of their major cities. Pyongyang, probably. And we don't. Maybe over time that would be.
Their attitudes might change once they start getting food in their stomachs.
Yeah, I know, right? Put a Taco Bell over there.
Oh yeah, McDonald's will pacify anybody.
It will, yeah.
Look at Kuwait; those are the fattest, laziest mother effers on the planet.
They don't even. Well, I mean, a lot of that's because of the oil dividend, but they don't even. I always like to tell people this because if you haven't been to somewhere like UAE or Kuwait, you don't understand how it works. when you go to a grocery store or a restaurant or something, those aren't Kuwaitis.
No.
Those are Indo-Chinese, Pakistanis,
Filipinos.
They don't have jobs.
No.
If they do, it's like a white collar job or an investment or investor or something like that.
They'll buy a car, never get an oil change, never do any maintenance.
It just blows up.
It'll blow up.
Yeah.
They'll leave it on the side of the road, get picked up, and go buy a new car.
Yeah.
I witnessed that.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
All right, well, we got to get out of here. Tell everybody where they can find you and the show and everything.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
You're the first person that. Thank you, by the way, Dan. Thank you for reaching out because you know me, where I'm like too much of a bitch to say, "Hey, can I come talk about what I'm doing?" It's called Jacked History, Jacked.
And it's at Jacked History on YouTube.
At Jacked History on YouTube. We got one episode out. We'll be doing one every week, and that's where it's going to live.
Sweet. Well, thanks for coming today. I appreciate the time.
Thanks, bro. I really appreciate it.
And thank you all for listening. Go to Jacked History and watch the first episode's out now. The next one will be out in 3 days, and we'll see what it is.
Yeah.
Suspense. Thank you for watching This Bit Citizen.